In recent years, the Elliott School has invited one of its exceptionally accomplished alumni to speak on these auspicious occasions. It's now my privilege to continue that tradition and introduce this year's commencement speaker, one of the Elliott School's most distinguished alumni, Lori Garver. Ms. Garver is the Deputy Administrator at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. She was nominated for this position by President Barack Obama, and she was confirmed by the United States Senate in July 2009. Ms. Garver first became interested in space policy while working in the office of Senator John Glenn. Over the course of her career, she has held important positions both in government and in the broader space policy community. In government, she has previously served as a special assistant to the NASA administrator and as a senior policy analyst for the Office of Policy and Plans before becoming the associate administrator for the Office of Policy and Plans. In addition to her government service, Ms. Garver has worked for the National Space Society, DFI Corporate Services, and Capital Space. She has served as a member of the National Advisory Council, as president of Women in Aerospace, and as president of the American Astronautical Society. Ms. Garver graduated from GW's Elliott School of International Affairs with a Master of Arts in Science, Technology, and Public Policy. She is widely and correctly regarded as one of the country's leading experts on space policy. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to welcome the Elliott School's 2011 commencement speaker, Lori Garver.
Greetings, Earthlings. It is wonderful to be here to speak to you, having sat where you, soon-to-be graduates, are sitting over 20 years ago. I can't really begin to tell you who spoke at my graduating class, or frankly, anything they said. I do remember a few things about the day, mainly how wonderful it was to look up and see my parents and my sister who traveled here from Michigan to see me. So when you all came down and were giving your shout-outs, that is the memory you will keep. Acknowledging your hard work and accomplishment is what they all came here to do today and what I'm here to do today. And it's a privilege for me to join them in honoring this occasion. I was asked to speak about my own career path and how the Elliott School prepared me for this career. Also, anything else that I thought might be of interest to you. So I'll admit struggling a little bit with this guidance, and will also admit that the only advice my speechwriters gave me was to keep it short. So I'll do my best to adhere to all that advice. It's hard for any of us to know at this point in time how your experiences and what you learned at the Elliott School will impact the rest of your life. But if my experience is any indication, you have undoubtedly already laid the foundation for multiple, as yet unseen careers, developed critical relationships with mentors, and made several lifelong friendships. While your varied paths on your way to the Elliott School have also greatly contributed to where you are today, what you learned and experienced here in these last few years will certainly shape your future in profound ways. It's very likely an inflection point. That point where the steering wheel is momentarily straight when turning from left to right or right to left. That's the wiki definition, I'll say. My master's in Science, Technology, and Public Policy provided me not only with the key credentials for my career, but also gave me the actual knowledge of how this nation develops and manages key policy and budget decisions. My career in space policy and the position I held today would quite simply not have been possible without my master's degree from the Elliott School. My path on the way to the Elliott School was pretty typical and possibly quite similar to many of yours. My interest in public service and international affairs dates back to my childhood growing up in Michigan while campaigning for my grandfather and uncle for state legislature and state senate. I was raised by a moderate Republican family with a stockbroker father, and so it was no surprise that my undergraduate degree was in political science and economics. It was not a big surprise either that I didn't go back to Michigan after college. Not unlike today, Michigan had been very hard hit by the recession in 1980s, and although I'd never stepped foot in Washington, D.C., I drove across the country in order to come here to make a difference. That's what my family had taught me growing up. The best part of what you can do is leave the world better than you found it. At that time in the state legislature, as farmers, they were really doing this as public service, just to give back, make some better laws for their fellow farmers. My dad, as a stockbroker, mind it's the 50s and 60s, was all about investing in companies that were going to be able to do things to better our future. But my next steps in Washington were also not giant leaps. I volunteered for John Glenn's presidential campaign and ended up being a receptionist and a scheduler. After Super Tuesday, when he was not successful in the race, I was interviewing for jobs. The economy in Michigan still wasn't to a point where I thought I could return and get a job. So again, through a typical DC network, I was hired at the National Space Society, this was pointed out, as a receptionist, bookkeeper, secretary. So for those of you being awarded your undergraduates this weekend, this quick synopsis of my early career is not shared to convince you to just take any job that is offered, although as a parent of high school and college students, that is my advice. My example highlights how early career choices can in fact lead to entire careers. Certainly it's true that if I had not found the National Space Society's mission, which is to create a spacefaring civilization, of interest or importance, I would have and could have moved on to other work in other fields, but as it turned out, this early job led to future convictions of my own about space exploration and development and how they are contributors to a better future for us all. It was this opportunity that led me, in fact, to apply for the Elliott School's Science, Technology, and Public Policy program. Now, a common theme for any commencement or leadership speech is typically that it's all about the people. And my message is no different. For me, it has been about the people and the relationships I made here at GW that have had the greatest long-lasting impact. I want to highlight just one notable person in that, on my path, and that is Professor John Logsdon. He led the Science and Technology Policy program at GW and then founded and led the Space Policy Institute for over 20 years. John was on the board of the National Space Society, and he's the one who talked to me about the master's program, became my professor, my advisor, and my lifelong mentor. Not only would I not have had the career I have had without the Elliott School, I would not have had it without Dr. John Logsdon. It was here, and through John, that I developed my views on the real value of NASA and the space program. How our space effort has led to discoveries in science that have revealed the unknown and rewritten our textbooks. How our exploration efforts have inspired generations to challenge themselves to reach for new heights. How NASA's missions have led to technology breakthroughs and have created whole new fields and returned billions of dollars to our economy. And how, from the vantage of space, we look back at Earth with an entirely new perspective, not as Americans, but as Earthlings. With the new information that we develop through this perspective, we also learn how to better protect our planet's future. When thinking about what I want to talk to you today, I want to give a specific example of something I learned in grad school that's been important for my current position. Well, it was here at school that I first learned about the critical policy and economic trade-offs made in the Nixon administration that led to where we are today, for instance, with the Space Shuttle program. Well, I've recently reread the history that first captivated me in school here 25 years ago. And do you have any idea how much easier it is now to get these original documents than it was 25 years ago? Professor Logsdon had us read the actual memos between, at the time, the Deputy Administrator of NASA, George Lowe, and the Deputy of the Office of Management and Budget, Cap Weinberger, and how they helped shape the future of the Space Shuttle program. Right now, we are ending the Space Shuttle program in the next month and a half and making decisions about our future. The knowledge and the context that I am working in today is provided by that very underpinning of what I learned here 25 years ago. GW gave me the very knowledge to do the best job for the nation and for the taxpayer every day. But beyond specific examples of how my experiences here shaped my career, there are several lessons that I'd say we all take from your achievements that we're now honoring. I looked up common commencement speech messages, again, since that's really easy now. Typical advice are things like the importance of goal setting, working as a team, taking risks, being flexible, creative, never giving up. So my added spin on all that advice is to leverage your own effectiveness by working for an organization that exemplifies those characteristics. So you know where this is headed. My example is NASA. You will find yours as well. These are government agencies, private industry, community organizations. But 41 years ago today, on a different Friday the 13th, NASA experienced what could easily have been our darkest day. 2 days into what was planned to be humanity's third human landing on another celestial body, the oxygen tank ruptured in the service module, putting the entire crew, mission, and undoubtedly the program at risk. While the mission's primary goal of accomplishing that moon landing would be lost, the men and women of NASA spent the next 4 days working together to save the crew and program. You all likely know of the story through Ron Howard and Tom Hanks and others' fabulous movie, Apollo 13, based on Jim Lovell's and Jeffrey Kluger's wonderful book, Lost Moon. And I think the reason the story is so captivating is that it actually happened to people, to NASA, to the nation, but also to the world. That is the promise that NASA continues to work to deliver on. And in that spirit, we recently held an internal senior management retreat where we were asked to identify NASA's greatest singular accomplishment. It was surprising to me that the collective response was not Apollo 11 and humanity's first steps on the moon, but those 4 days that we recovered Apollo 13. So these days represent what is best in all of us. What we're recommending to you today, that determination, creativity, stamina, and teamwork. It's worthwhile to remember the potential of what we can all accomplish when we come together, which, as Dean Brown said, with that focus for such a common purpose. While those 4 days were extremely unique, NASA works every day to accomplish the near impossible and often succeeds. Since each of you have this background now and are getting degrees in public policy and international affairs, you can likely see the fun and challenge of marrying these goals of NASA's of accomplishing the impossible and managing that through the bureaucratic process that is Washington. Well, getting our 2011 budget through Congress alone may indeed have been this, my own goal of accomplishing the near impossible. But I guess it's a little like Apollo 13. We did all live. I do think I'd want Gina Davis to play me in the movie. We at NASA are stewards not only of exploration and discovery, we also know that we preserve that part in all of us that says we can accomplish those things not thought possible. If our charge is to imagine and do what others think is crazy, in many ways, we've come to the right place. This nation was founded on that very principle. We exist so those who come here know they will not be held back or mocked for their ideas, but encouraged and supported. After all, Einstein chose to come here, and von Braun chose to come here. Being here means you can dream. It means you have the opportunity to do the impossible, to make a difference. And it's because of that very idea on which NASA was founded. Every feat we've ever achieved, from putting a man on the moon and bringing him back safely, to building amazing reusable space vehicles, was previously the stuff of comic books and movies. But we did all those things. Why? Not because they were easy, but as President Kennedy reminded us 50 years ago, because they are hard. Because they serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. But to what end? Just to do impossible things? NASA is an agency founded for the express purpose of doing these things for the benefit of all people. So, as these public policy and international affairs students, where do we look for our statement of purpose? But our formative documents. The Space Act of 1958 that created NASA says it explicitly. The Congress declares that it is the policy of the United States that activities in space should be devoted to peaceful purposes for the benefit of all humankind. It used to say mankind, that is an updated edit. This is the reason NASA exists, to reach for new heights and reveal the unknown so that what we do and learn will benefit all humankind. So some of our recent examples, the Messenger program, which has been returning just this last month from Mercury, never seen before pictures of our sun's closest neighbor. This summer we'll launch a spacecraft named Aquarius into orbit to examine the Earth's ocean salinity and find out more about how that affects our climate. It will give us an understanding that won't just benefit our nation, but all humankind. Valuable research in fields like energy, human health, continue every day on the International Space Station with an international crew of 6 astronauts and cosmonauts, a continuous human presence for over 10 years. As an organization that was born from the Cold War, this serves as a shining example of our cooperative efforts. Later this year, we will send a rover named Curiosity to the dusty red surface of Mars. And all these things serve as proof of what we as human beings are capable of. And exploration is one of the most basic human characteristics of all. The journey of exploration that started for me, seated right here where you are, which in many ways seems to me like yesterday, has led me to a position where I take what I learned here, work with some of the very people I met here to make informed choices about how NASA and our nation can continue to deliver on that promise. Well, most of you have been living in Washington these past few years, and you know it's a difficult time to be trusted with taxpayer dollars, and it's been a year of tough choices. Everyone's had to make them. But these kinds of choices have never stopped us before. We're reminded that we are at our best when things get in the way, when reality gets in the way. We've been beating reality and gravity for 50 years now at NASA. That's what makes us human. When challenges lie ahead, when resources are tight, when the technology has not yet to be invented, we at NASA figure it out. Just look at the technology we've developed for the James Webb Space Telescope. We want to look farther back than the Hubble Space Telescope. We want to look 10 times farther back, to the very beginning of the universe. We want to view a blue ocean on a distant planet in your lifetime. We go about delivering on that promise. And those of you graduating today are delivering on a very important promise to yourselves. You've set goals and achieved them. You've taken risks, you've been creative, you've taken all this advice, you've worked as individuals and as teams, and you have never given up. There will be challenges ahead, and that is the good news. We can all strive to be like NASA on her very best days and accomplish things because they are hard and because they are important and because they are of value. Choose to make a difference in your own way, and you never know where your path or contrail will lead. So I spoke at the beginning of inflections. Your life's inflection points are times when you can really look back and reflect on how your life took shape. It's been a great experience for me to take this time to look back at the inflection point that was my time at the Elliott School, to recognize the importance of what I learned here and who I got to know here. Now it's your turn to begin your next chapters with all the knowledge and support of this amazing institution. I hope you will find a few moments along the way to look back and really appreciate the experiences you've had here, and I really thank you for giving me the opportunity by inviting me to speak to you today to do just that. Godspeed, graduates.